Hey book lovers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mar, and I hope all of you guys are doing well. I thought for this week's video, we would do a little bit of a reset vlog in that we are going to take a look at all of my bookshelves and all of that and my TBR cart and just do a little reset of how I want to display my books on my bookshelves and how I'm displaying everything so far. And so 6 months ago, I did do a bookshelf reorganization, but a lot can happen and a lot can change in 6 months. And so behind me, I ended up getting this bookshelf for this wall because there was nothing here before, and so it ended up working out that this kind of became my favorites, my favorite series, books, and all of that shelf. And then the bookshelf in my office over there, those are kind of like other series, all my other books and all of that, romance books and my TBR card and all of that. And so yeah, I thought for this week's video we would do a little reorganization. I don't think I'm going to be changing too many shelves or anything, or I'm not going to do like a complete like bookshelf refresh or anything like that. For the most part, I think a lot of these shelves are going to stay the same. It's just I've read a few books within the past 6 months that now need a home and their own space on my bookshelf and all of that. And so I've kind of just been placing them wherever I see, free space and all of that. And so I actually want to be a bit more intentional with how I'm laying out my bookshelves and all of that. So the one behind me, actually, I did a little reorganization in my last vlog. And so this one is definitely going to stay the same, but I definitely will give a bit more of an in-depth look as to how I rearranged all the books on my bookshelf, and maybe it will give you some inspo. For me, I like using my bookshelves more so as storage rather than like an aesthetic means or whatever. Like I try to be as aesthetic as possible. But at the end of the day, I'm going for functionality and making sure that all of my books have a home. And so, yeah, without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to take you over to my other room to sort of see the state of where my bookshelves are currently. Okay, so this bookshelf I have behind me, I call her my OG bookshelf in that I've had this Billy bookcase since I was a kid, and it has gone through multiple stylings, iterations, and all of that. As you know, I am like a big K-pop, like BTS fan and all of that, so this used to be actually my dedicated BTS album bookshelf and all of that. And then as I started getting into reading again, I realized I ended up having more books than I did BTS albums and all of that, but I still use this as like K-pop album storage and all of that. But yeah, this is a bookshelf I've had since I was a kid and developed my love of reading, and so I thought I would just kind of walk you through where it is right now. And so top shelf, obviously my nostalgia Percy Jackson books, and so this one definitely is not going to be changing, so I will just be giving her a little refresh. This next shelf is my Sarah J. Maas and kind of romantasy series or fantasy series shelf. This one might get a little bit of a refresh as I've gotten just like more books within these series and all that. So yeah. And then moving on down here, we have more fantasy series. This turned into kind of my Asian fantasy books, literary fiction shelf, last bookshelf reorganization, but I think I will have to change this up again because I just have more books that kind of fit this vibe a lot more, and so we'll have to kind of do a refresh of this. And then moving down here, we have some of my YA series, thrillers, fantasy books, and all of that. And then over here is kind of like a mishmash of just different literary books, satirical books, and all that. And then like the one, like the Shatter Me series for some reason. And then down here, this has ended up being kind of like my finished shelf, in that all of these books over here are books that I finished within the past 6 months but just don't have a place on this shelf. So these are kind of the reason why I need there to be a little bit more of a refresh and all of that of this shelf, because I think I just have a lot of space on this shelf that needs to kind of be addressed. And so yeah, this is the OG bookshelf over here. And then over here on this skinny bookshelf is more so of my romance series and all of that. So up here at the top is my Stephanie Garber Caraval, Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and all of that. So any Stephanie Garber books, this is their spot up here. And then as we move down here, it's pretty much still the same as last time. So it's my Lynn Painter YA romances. I have my Ashley Poston books, and then my Save Me Maxton Hall series by Mona Caston. And so this shelf is pretty filled up, and I haven't added any books to this one yet, so I think this one's probably going to stay the same. And then down here on this shelf is my Allie Hazelwood shelf, so all of her romances plus a random Lila Sage supernatural book, because I just didn't know where to put it, so that's what's on this shelf. And then on this shelf, this is my Emily Henry shelf, and then I guess I put Picking Daisies on Sundays up here as well, but this is my Emily Henry focused books and all of that, and then I can't really fit into frame. But down here on these bottom two shelves are just the rest of my romance books that I have. And so this one is just a mix of authors like Abby Jimenez, Megan Quinn, Christina Lauren. And then down here is like Hannah Grace, Anna Huang, Red River White and Royal Blue for some reason, and then other random authors and all of that. So yeah, I think this shelf has probably stayed the same the most out of all my shelves. But yeah, these are kind of how my books are arranged right now, and let me take you to my TBR cart. So yeah, over here is my TBR cart. And the one rule I have for myself is that any books that I have not read cannot go on my shelf. So everything that has been on the shelves, the 3 shelves that I've shown you before, they're all books that I've read. And so during this reorganization, I might go in and see if there's any books I want to unhaul, which is going to be unlikely. But yeah, these are all the books I've collected within the past few months or so, maybe. Okay, not few months. I've had some of these for like more than a year, and I just haven't gotten to them, and hence why I'm on a book buying ban. That is very generous. I think for this one, I might rearrange the books on here just based off of genre a bit more and sort of what I want to prioritize a bit more, because we have these 2 shelves that are pretty much full, and then up here, which is like more stuff I need to read. And so yeah, it just helps me put into like things into perspective a lot more. And so yeah, let's get into the refresh and revamp of my bookshelves. I think I'm gonna just walk you through sort of how I envision what I'm going to be doing, and then we'll see how everything goes as I start doing it. But yeah, let's get into it. I think the first thing I'm going to tackle is this big OG bookshelf behind me. So I'm going to go through each shelf, pull all the books off, wipe them, clean them, wipe them down. I have my Swiffers and my Lysol wipes, so I should be good to go. And yeah, I think this one is probably going to be the shelf that has the most rearranging and all of that, just based off of how much real estate there is on this shelf. But yeah, we're going to start top to bottom, and then I'm probably just going to do a time lapse and then walk you through what I have once I'm done this entire shelf. But yeah, let's get into it. So my bookshelves have finally been reorganized, and so I think I'm just gonna walk you through, and don't worry, I'll give you close-ups of each shelf as we go. But yeah, here is the OG bookshelf. Let's start on this one and then we'll make our way to my other room. But yeah, here we have my OG bookshelf, and this one has probably gone through the most change just based off of what books I now currently have on it. And so obviously the top has stayed the exact same, which is my Percy Jackson shelf. Love that shelf, and just like looking through all of these books has made me want to do a reread of Percy Jackson so bad. And I don't know if that would make like good like vlog content or whatever, or bookish content. So if you're interested in me doing that, let me know, because I have the special editions of the Percy Jackson books as they've been released, and then I also have my original copies of what I read as a kid. I've just ultimately kept because these editions are obviously out of print, and I don't think anyone would want my editions anyways because they are pretty old. Then we have the Heroes of Olympus series, and then we have the new Percy Jackson series, and then behind it is the Trials of Apollo series, and I don't have all of the books in that series just because I didn't love that series as much, and so I just ultimately didn't end up getting the rest of the series. And then I have some other books in the Riordan verse as well, so like the Red Pyramid series, the Magnus Chase series, and then just ones that are under his publishing house. And then, yeah, so moving on, we have my Sarah J. Maas shelf. And for this one, I kind of did a bit more rearranging of, just because I remembered I ordered bookmarks from the company that does these dust jackets and all of that. And so I decided that I might as well open them all up and put each of the bookmarks that correspond to each book into these. And so because of that, it makes the books have like a little bit more space, and so I couldn't stack them on top of each other without like ruining them. And so for Throne of Glass, I moved it over to the left here, and then I moved Akatar and Crescent City over here, which I feel like also makes a lot more sense to do. And then I ultimately had space for 3 more books, so I decided to put the Drowned Gods trilogy by Pascal Lassalle in this corner just to fill it up. These books are very different tonally from these books, but I think they work well just because it goes into like the moon phases and all of that. And then, yeah, so then on this next shelf we have here, I did probably the most rearranging, trying to figure out what works well with what. And so this is kind of my Asian fantasy, other types of fantasy type of books. On the left, we have the same books in this stack. So we have the Greenbone Saga, we have the Poppy War trilogy, and then just some other Asian fantasy magical realism books. And then over here, I decided to put my standalone books. So we have Babel by R.F. Kuang, we have Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, which I believe this is my signed copy, and then Blood Over Brighthaven and Alchemized, and I feel like this just kind of fits the dark academia fantasy vibes and all of that, and so these are all standalones in themselves, so they don't have any series attached to them. And then over here I have all of my duologies plus some other fantasy books. So we have the Six Crimson Cranes duology, we have the Study in Drowning duology, then we have The Floating World, which I do have the second book on my TBR card. I have not read that yet, but I did want to leave some space for it. And then we have Immortal Consequences, which is also, I believe, I don't know if it's a duology or trilogy, but I did want to also leave some space for this series as well. And so then we have Iron Widow and Water Moon. And so these are, well, Iron Widow's a part of a series, but I just haven't had really a chance nor like the need to pick up the second. I haven't really wanted to pick up the rest of the series, and so I kind of just left it at that. And then Water Moon is a standalone, and so this can kind of float anywhere on my shelves. And then the rest are also kind of just a mishmash of books. So A Song to Drown Rivers, this is a standalone. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is also a standalone. Never Ever After, I believe, is going to be a series, but I also don't really have an inclination to pick up the second book in the series, and so I don't know about this one. Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare is also also a series, but I just have not picked up the second book. And then we have Mistborn, which is also a series, and I don't have the other two books in the series, and I don't know if I'm gonna get them or not. And yeah, so let's move down to the bottom two shelves of my bookshelf. So the bottom two bookshelves probably have the most change and all of that because I just needed more room on these shelves. And so over here we have more fantasy and all of that. These are mostly all adult fantasy, literary fiction, and all of that. So there's just a mix. We have Only a Monster and Moral Dark. These are the only two YA ones that I have in this stack, and then the rest are like Alchemy of Secrets, Red City, Gifted and Talented, Homeseeking, Barrier Bones in the Midnight Soil, and The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So like these are all kind of a mishmash of fantasy, magical realism, and all of that. Some are standalones, some are going to be series, and so when we get to those, we will probably have to do another rearranging on this bookshelf, but right now these are fine. And then over here we just have kind of a bit more standalones and all of that. So we have Fairy Tale, Girl Dinner, and One for My Enemy from Olivia Blake, Intermezzo. Then we have the Red Rising series. I don't have all of the books in these series, so once I do pick up all the books, I will need space for that. Then we have Half City, and then we have the more so YA books over here. And these are all kind of duologies, trilogies, and just like some standalones as well. So yeah, but we have the Cruel Prince trilogies, and then we have the Shatter Me series over here, and then a bunch of the other books I have. And then over here on this shelf is just kind of a mishmash of just all of the books I have. So we have some graphic novels. We have the Kingdom Keeper series, which is a huge throwback, in my opinion. And then we have just like a random fantasy novel that I just did not have space for, so I just decided to throw it here. Then we have the Burn for Burn series, then we have the None Shall Sleep series, and then this is kind of like the biggest mix of just books I have on my shelf. So we have some satirical books, we have some just literary fiction and all of that, and then we have like some cozier fantasy medieval type-esque books, and then we have some mysteries and more literary fiction books over here. And so yeah, that is the shelf. And then obviously my bottom shelf is where I store most of my K-pop albums and all of that, so I'm not going to show you that. This is kind of what we ended up with for this set of books so far. And then as you can tell, I don't have a lot of room to store many books, so we will probably have to do an unhaul sometime soon, or unhaul as in move some of these books to my bookshelf downstairs in the basement, and then we will deal with those books when the time comes. But yeah, let's move on to the other books I have on my other bookshelves. Yeah. So over here on this bookshelf, not much has changed, hardly anything has changed. So the top shelf is obviously my Stephanie Garber shelf, then we move on to my YA romance, rom-com-esque books, Maxton Hall books, and all of that, plus Ashley Poston books. Then we move on to my Ali Hazelwood shelf, and then my Emily Henry shelf, and then we move on to the kind of mishmash of romance authors I have on the two bottom shelves so far. And so yeah, these ones I just gave a quick cleaning to and all of that. And I feel like these shelves won't really change until I add more rom-coms into my collection and all of that. But for right now, this shelf is going to stay the same for the time being. And then down here we move to my TBR cart and all of that. I kind of just rearranged these books by genre, and then there's also some books on my TBR cart as well that I was planning on doing content for and videos for, but I just haven't gotten to addressing those yet, so hopefully we find some time soon. But yeah, the top 4 books are books that are just romantasy books that I want to get to. So we have A River Enchanted, Warrior, Princess, Assassin, then we have Anathema, and then we have When the Moon Hatched. And so these kind of just didn't fit in the TBR cart, and so I left them up here. And then I've read The Dragon Republic. Obviously this is my signed copy by R.F. Kuang, so I had to give her little spotlight over there. And then these books down here are just romantasy books, some fantasy books, and then some cozy fantasy books. So these I really want to get to sometime soon because I usually leave like all of my romantasy to like the very end of the year, and I want to break that habit because I just want to read more romantasy and fantasy books because that is obviously my favorite genre. And then down here we have some romance, literary fiction, more higher stakes fantasy, and then yeah, just a mix of other genres, a little life, which I still need to get to sometime at least. But yeah, that is the TBR card. I feel like I will be able to make my way through this pretty soon and all of that, but it's really just a matter of when am I going to sit and ponder and read all these. We don't know, but that is the beauty of this channel. We don't know what my next move is, and that is completely fine. And now we have returned to this bookshelf that I said I would give a quick little tour, and so we're going to do that. So the top shelf is obviously my favorite romantasy books, and so up here we have the Fourth Wing series, then we have my favorite series, which is the Dire Bound series. So we have the Fairy Loot edition of it, then we have the traditionally published edition of Dire Bound and Fury Bound, and I'm waiting for my Fairy Loot edition of Fury Bound very patiently. And then we have Wild Reverence, and then behind Wild Reverence we have the Divine Rivals series. And so, yeah, these are kind of just like my favorite romantasy books, as well as I just think the covers are stunning, and so I have to display them somewhere. And then as we move down, we have the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series, and so I have literally every like special edition that I could get my hands on of the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series, because again, one of my favorite series. So they just came out with the graphic novel version of it, so I obviously had to get that. And so yeah, we have the Fairy Loot editions of it, we have the copies I've had since I was in high school, and then we have these special edition copies of them. And so yeah, I think they're just so cutesy and just represent me as a whole. And then over here we have the Unearthly series. So we have Unearthly, Hollowed, and then we have Boundless, which is the third book. I'm currently reading that one right now, so hence why it's not on the shelf. But as you can tell, like, once the shelf is complete, it's complete. We have my little Sylvanian family little guys over here, and so yeah, that is this shelf. And then the next shelf we have, this is my Chloe Gong shelf and all of that. So over here we have the Immortal Longing series, and then over here we have the whole Secret Shanghai series, and then we have Cold War, which is her new YA cyberpunk series. And so I'm excited for this shelf to continue growing. And yeah, Chloe Gong was one of the authors that got me back into reading, and now I just want to do a reread of all of these series, especially the Immortal Longing series. I know this is her adult fantasy series, and it has like mixed reactions to it. I really like it, but I know it's a very personal opinion. But yeah, and then down here we have my Jennifer Lynn Barnes shelf. Jennifer Lynn Barnes has become one of my favorite authors. I think, you know, there's just something about her books that just gives me like a lot of like serotonin and like energy to continue reading and all of that. Over here we have the Inheritance Game series, so pretty much the original books and then all of the new books. I do have the, what is it? It's not the Grandest Game. Oh, I do have the Brothers Hawthorne somewhere in my house. It's just on another shelf, but that is supposed to be going right here. But yeah, I'm so excited for the last book in the series, and then I really, really hope she writes another series, because I feel like Inheritance Games, I feel like there's enough story in here that it could go on forever. But yeah, and then I recently just got the special editions of the Natural series, or the next 3 books in the Natural series, and so had to put them on my shelf somehow and display them. So this is the Natural series, and then these are just the rest of her other series. I know she has like a ton, and she's been in this like publishing game for such a long time, but these are the ones I could get my hands on for the time being. And then I also have to get the last book in the Raised by Wolves series, and then I know she has a few other ones, but those are kind of just like for later and all of that I'll get to when I get to them. There's literally no good way to display this bottom shelf over here, but this is where my Magnolia Parks books sit, as well as my Ally Carter books. Magnolia Parks, like, I really don't know what's going on with this series, but my collection is there, plus like the other books I have in Jessa Hastings' collection. But with Ally Carter, Ally Carter is one of my favorite authors. She is also an author that got me back into reading as a kid, or she was the one that like I was so obsessed with as a kid. I read like all of the Gallagher Girls series multiple times, and I feel like I'm also due for another reread of the Gallagher Girls series. But yeah, this is my final bookshelf right here. And with that being said, I feel like here is a great way to end off this video, very full circle. But thank you so much for watching this video and letting me walk you through my bookshelves. And so I guess I'll see you again in another 6 months when I do my next bookshelf refresh. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you rearrange your bookshelves very similar to me, or if you have any tips or advice for how I can try to maximize the amount of space I have in my room and all of that and all my shelves, let me know. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!